migration to Qatar and its effects. Back in 1980, Qatar was a country with just it was a country with just 200,000 citizens. It was 1/37 of what London is today. It was one of the smallest countries in the world, but this number escalated quickly. Between 1980 and 1985, Qatar's population grew for about 10.2%. This rate slowed down between 1990 and 1995, but that took in 2005 when its population grew for 15.3%. As we can see, most of the population is made up by non-Qatari residents, and Qatari residents make only one-eighth of the total population. Back in 1970, we can see that foreigners made 60% of the population, and now they make an stunning 88% of it. So where do they come from and why? Well, they come from lower economically developed countries in hopes of getting jobs and money to send back to their families. Some of the lower economically developed countries are India, Nepal, Philippines, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Arab countries, and 25% of the migrants come from the rest of the world. Here we have three population and gender pyramids, one for 1950, one for 2010, and the third one for the expectation of 2050. So, here we can see that back in 1950, the population was quite gender balanced, but people didn't seem to make it past the 50 years of age. Then, in 2010, we can see that the population has much more males than females, but people seem to live longer. And the expectations for 2050 are that there will be much more males than females, and that they will live longer.
I will be talking about the benefits of migration to Qatar and what do migrants create, like positive things that create on Qatar. The first one is most people that move to Qatar move for work because there's best salaries and there's no taxation. This is something that also migrants create because they create good jobs. Another point is that Qatar has a high education rate, so schools bring teachers from all parts of the world, so they have a good education. Citizens of Qatar are growing a lot and fastly, and also they are growing in tourists. Okay, another point is that immigrants bring energy and innovation to Qatar. That's why it's growing in a fast way. Here's a photo of how was Qatar in past 1977, and here's present. You can see that it changed a lot. This maybe like part of this is from the works that immigrants create. Here's another photo. This is Doha, that is the capital on 1971. This is the center of the city. And here is the commercial center in 68. Well, here's the sources. Consequences of Qatar. The first consequence is that Qatar's economy has grown faster than any other one. This means that Qatar is overpopulated. Another consequence is that the business also developed, and many banks have been opened to cover the needs of people who live there. The same. Construction has grown a lot, and high towers have been built as well as buildings and houses, like Carlos said. And more pollution and trash in the city. So this is caused by the immigrants. And Here's a photo of the migration of Qatar.
Migration in Dubai. I'm going to talk about the Palm Islands. The Palm Islands are three artificial islands made in Dubai to create like a sort of sub-Dubai. First, you have the Palm Jumeirah, the Palm Jebel Ali, and the Palm Deira. The Palm Deira is not finished yet, but the Palm Jebel Ali is the most residential one, and the Palm Jumeirah is the most like with a movement like of hotels and stuff. People were really required in this construction. Of 60,000 people, 20,000 were migrants. They usually came from Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Jordan, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka. Here you have like a graph showing, but they mostly came from India. They were under liability. Liability means that if one a constructor of the construction dies, the government is not responsible. 50 people died in that construction, and they are not paid anything. Here there's a graph also of how migrants are, like high skilled, low skilled, or medium skilled. Mostly before the construction, they were all low skilled, but when the construction started, they began to grow and they were high skilled. Palm Islands brought a lot of complaints and environmental concerns. The construction changed the coastal erosion, it changed the wildlife, it changed the wave patterns. Here you can see in 2006 that the waves were almost 1 meter and they finished at 2 meters. Then it increased the storm frequency, it lowered the coast of Dubai, it created a weak soil. There was also a lack of sustainability, and it reduced the amount of sunlight. That's why the growth was less. And there was a lot of water pollution because basically the construction was putting sand on top of the sea. But also you have the pros of the islands. Although the construction caused a lot of concern, a lot of people are traveling only to Dubai to know these islands. First of all, it's a top attraction, including the hotels inside, such as Atlantis. Based on that, a lot of tourism is happening. To enter this island, you need to go on a taxi or in a public service. So the taxis, in the majority, increased a lot. So it gave a lot of work to the taxis. Then also, as it was a mini city, it gave a lot of jobs, such as in restaurants, hotels, in residential homes, in schools. So the economic progress was positive, that gave a push factor, so there was a better future. So in conclusion, with this and many other projects, Dubai's migration and economic part is growing and positively. Here there is a video showing how the
Action.
Okay, today we're going to talk about the migration to Buenos Aires. The content of our presentation will be migration from the north of Argentina, migration from Bolivia, migration from Peru, and well, Van Druften was going to talk about Peru, but he's not here. Okay, the Norte Grande Argentina. I'm going to give a brief introduction. Then I'm going to explain how poverty is measured. I will explain how does migration occur and why, and I will give a conclusion. Poverty is a predominant feature in the societies that are settled in the Argentinian Norte Grande region. In this context, the urban poverty situations are reflected in the current economy and social features. This large region is denominated as periphery, which means where economic production is poor as there are only primary activities. The conditions of commercialization and prices in the world market, in addition to other factors, such as the loss of value added by transferring the process of the higher generation of this value outside the region. In addition, although there was a great deal of investment and application of new technologies, they failed to substantially after the scheme of productive weakness and in the regional participation in the national sector. A social deterioration as a result of the process of concentration of wealth since the mid-1970s has had a great impact on some societies and territories in our country, especially the 9 provinces of the north, causing them to appear more and more frequently leading the list of indicators of deficient and low quality of life. In this geographical area, the growth of poverty in rural areas was due mainly to insufficient incomes accompanied by deprivation of basic social services and lack of employment. Due to the fact that the current agro-industrial exploitation generated fewer jobs and reduces small producers, who do not respond to the new dynamics and rural wage earned to the conditions of seasonal workers, or force them to move to the urban labor market. So the population opted to move to the provincial capitals looking for a stable work and better economical conditions. Rural migration was one of the main forms of urban population growth, and it is related to the increase of slums or spontaneous settlements through the individual and collective occupation of land. This can be visualized with occupations of land in the periphery of the cities turning into true pockets of poverty. This, urban poverty, seems to be reflected very characteristics of the current economy and its modest of production, while reflected its social features because it prevents the integration of groups. A common feature of the NGA, which is the Norte Grande Argentina capitals, is the high percentage of population they have with respect to the provincial total. The strong growth of its inhabitants since the mid of the last century is due mainly to the population's contribution from rural migration and small urban centers from each province as a result of the successive crisis periods of the main regional crops and developments in provincial economic structures. To add on to this situation, people from neighbor countries also migrate. The urban expansion of the capital has given rise to a vast periphery with heterogeneous quality in terms of services, equipment, and infrastructure, opposed to the so-called central areas, central hordes, or historical centers, where the main activities recurrence of the main means of transport and strong growth inherit. The Instituto Nacional de Estadísticos y Censos, is in charge of measuring poverty. It is measured by the following way. There are 2 lines of incomes they are established. Those who cannot buy the basic food to meet the calories needed, the basic food basket, are considered indigents, and those who cannot buy food or other basic products and services such as clothing and transport, the total basic baskets, are considered poor. You can understand by the introduction that people living in the north, rural cities, migrate to urban cities such as Buenos Aires as they have a lack of training or education, university or primary, because of lack of options or even dismay at the economic situation. As people migrate to Buenos Aires or other urban cities as Córdoba, they usually work illegal. Black employment is very common in these cities since it's generally people from rural areas who work for people from higher societies. People in cities sometimes need someone to help them, and as they cannot justify all their money spent in another salary, people from the rural areas work in black, as they are not legal papers.
Many women come to work in black cities because they know how to be housewives and they take advantage of being in the city to study because they don't need to spend their earned money and they can save it for the future. They do not, on the other hand, men usually charge the countryside areas because they do know how to do farm jobs and as housewives they don't have to spend their money earned and they can save it for the future. People who live in the cities are against the migration as they take off their jobs because people who migrate like ask for less money than people who live in the city because they like need it more. To conclude, the north of Argentina is full of rural areas which have economical problems as there is deprivation of basic social services which cause lack of employment, dismay at the economic situation, and lack of training. So the population opted to move to the provincial capitals to look for stable work and better economical conditions. Okay, I took my information from the first three slides and sources, and then I read like lots of articles of what was happening now. And well, the video you saw in the background, there were like some pictures of maps, and there were like landscapes of the north of Argentina. And I took the video from YouTube, which are the last two links.
So I'm going to talk about migration from Bolivia to Argentina. First, I'm going to say introduction, where are they living in Argentina, and the quantity of Bolivians that are living in Argentina. In recent decades, Bolivia has become one of the main sources of immigration in Argentina, making Bolivia one of the largest Hispanic American immigrant groups in Argentina, along with Paraguayans and Peruvians. The 2001 census recorded 233,000 legal Bolivians residing in Argentina. This is due in large part to economic abundance and favorable opportunities which immigrants have in Argentina, as well as the healthcare and quality of life. Most Bolivians reside in Greater Buenos Aires, especially in those neighborhoods that are circled there, which are La Matanza, Morón, 3 de Febrero, and all the Escobar neighborhoods. Within the city of Buenos Aires, um, within the city of within the city of Buenos Aires, there are the Bolivians residing mainly in the neighborhoods of Flores, Villa Soldati, Villa Lugano, Liniers, and Nueva Pompeya. Bolivian immigrants in Argentina found a place to work, progress, and help their families. Thousands of Bolivians have joined the Argentine everyday life, contributing in areas as diverse as construction, education, health, sports, and music areas. The Permanent Assembly for Human Rights of Bolivia considers that there are over 3 million Bolivian citizens living in different foreign countries. Of these, migration to Argentina accounts for 73% of the total, being the largest Bolivian diaspora group abroad. Today, it is estimated that more than 3.5 million Bolivians reside in Argentina, 9.5% of Argentina's total population.
I'm going to talk about migration from Peru to Buenos Aires. Sorry. Well, here is the map of Peru, and there's a map of Buenos Aires. People work as nannies here in Buenos Aires because they don't have enough money to help their families or them to eat. So they come here to Buenos Aires to work. A few months later or a few years later, they quit being nannies and they start a better job. They don't Peruanos don't work in Peru because in Peru there aren't good jobs. There aren't good jobs in Peru. Okay. And here is one of them.
But he's absent.
Is it safe to talk, Johnny? Now we're going to talk about dirty cities of Europe, specifically of London. This was London 700 years ago, and the reasons why London is now a dirty city are the following. Inhabitants of medieval London produced 50 tons of excrement a day, and as you can see, there were no pavements. People walked on bare earth, but the ground was covered with excrement as well as animal entrails and rotting food. Many streets became impassable, so muckrakers were hired to clean them as best as they could. Though the job was abhorrent and their life expectancy was low, the muckrakers were paid much better than average workmen. In 1345, a law was passed stating that anyone dumping a refuse in the street would be fined 2 shillings, at the time a considerable sum. Between 1348 and 1665, there were 16 outbreaks of the plague in London. During the Black Death of 1348-49, a third of London's inhabitants died or fled. Other causes of terrible smells in medieval London were the tanneries, where leather would be boiled. People rarely washed or changed their clothes. Now, Malena will talk about cholera and its relationship with migration.
When migration started to occur, many problems started to appear, no? So one of the problems were the multiple diseases. One of these was cholera. This was a very important one because at that time it killed a lot of England's population, and as it was new in England, no one knew how to control it or where did it come from. John Snow, a scientific from England, had the theory that cholera was contagious through water, because at that time London was a very dirty city, and so the water was dirty too, and so people had cholera. This is well explained through this picture, where you can see that here the devil, or this man is referred to as the devil, which is giving water to the kids and the families. That's well, as it was dirty water, it had color. Can you click on the photo? So cholera has to do with migration, because cholera first initiated in India, and people who came from India to London to work or to have a better quality of life brought cholera with them, and then the people from London had cholera. This, now in this video it's going to be well explained, but this, like the Industrial Revolution, had a lot to do with cholera, because, well, as people from other parts of the world came to work.
The Industrial Revolution was a major contributor to the spread of cholera. The increased speed and ease of travel allowed by the revolution, particularly by the opening of the Suez Canal and the invention of the steamboat in 1869, led to a rapid spread of the disease. Not only did the Industrial Revolution accelerate the disbursement of the disease around the world, but it also allowed for increased and devastating outbreaks when it reached Europe. Once in continental Europe, cholera quickly spread along major waterways and major railways.
Here you can see the
reached the
conditions in which people
industrial European cities and rapidly spread with the aid of the crowded and unsanitary housing conditions and unhygienic water sources. The disease had spread in October of 1831, then in London in 1832, with major outbreaks in 1841, 1854, and 1866. During these years of cholera outbreak, 2.5 million people were crammed in one city. There was no infrastructure, no sewage system, or waste management. Sewage and clean water were mixed, and as a result, bacteria survived when the sewage combined with water. While the exact cause of cholera would not be determined for decades, it was clear that cities needed to have clean sources of water. On the other side of the globe, the push was made in New York City to construct what would become a reservoir system.
So, well, this video explained a little more where did cholera come from and well, in the conditions that people lived in London. So, well, John Snow was the one that had the major theory of where did cholera come from. And here, this was one of his tests that he did, that in one side of the street, he tested the levels of cholera of people, where the side of the street that the waste from the city went to the place where they took the water at that time, and in the other side of the street, he tested the level of cholera of like people who drank water, which dirt came like out, like didn't go into the water, and only in this side of the street, all the people died, and in this side of the street, only one people died from cholera. So, in conclusion, cholera was linked to migration because when the commercial routes increased, all the people from India contagious the disease to people from London. So this picture is an example that here, I don't know if you can see, but here says migration, like it was closed for migration. Like people from London were like nothing like understanding for the people, like for the migrants, and so they didn't like them, and well, they were very angry with them.
The Black Death was a disease that finished with more than one-third of the population of Europe. It was between the years 1346 and 1353. It was because in the American ships there were rats, and these rats were infected because they were bitten by mosquitoes. These same mosquitoes, rats also bit the persons, and those persons were infected, and that's how it started going through all the population. It all started in Central Asia. Then it went into it starts through China and India, and finally it contains all the Black Sea and finished with all the lives of this country.
I'm going to talk about air pollution in London. Air pollution refers to substances in the air that harm human health, plants, and animal life. In London, air pollution has the second biggest impact on public health after smoking. But what's in polluted air? There are many harmful substances that can pollute the air atmosphere. And some of the main ones are carbon dioxide, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxide, and carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide is the highest form of human-caused air pollution. Sulfur oxide, volcanoes, and various industrial processes cause higher levels of sulfur oxide in the air. Petroleum and coal often contain sulfur compounds, and burning them produces sulfur oxide. Nitrogen oxides. These are forced out during high temperature burning, and electric discharge during thunderstorm also create them. Carbon monoxide. Vehicle exhaust is a main source of carbon monoxide. Air quality in London has improved in recent years as a result of policies to reduce emissions primarily from the road transport. This is known as the Great Smog in 1952. The capital was famous for its dirty air before of the Great Smog, but the Great Smog took the death of 4,000 people. And even now, the city lives under a deadly cloud of invisible pollution.
The great smog has to do with migration because as at that time the industrial revolution was like just new, and migrants came, and obviously for jobs, for better jobs and better lives, and more fabrics were made, and there were more smog in the air because of the of the of the of the of the pollution that came out of the fabrics.
These are the sources that we used for our presentation.
We hope you've enjoyed these presentations, these Sass talks, this innovative new project that we've introduced in the school. I'm sure you'll agree that the students' work was of a very high standard, and we hope you enjoyed their presentations. Thank you very much for watching.